In the Dobropillia direction, the defense forces of Ukraine continue to carry out stabilization measures. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. It is noted that as a result of active joint actions of units and subdivisions of the Armed Forces and the National Guard of Ukraine, which are part of the 1st Azov National Guard Corps, the enemy is suffering significant losses. In the last 3 days alone, the irretrievable losses of the Russian occupiers amounted to 206 people, sanitary losses 73 people, prisoner 1, the report says. Also, according to the General Staff, the enemy lost a significant amount of equipment and weapons. In particular, during the specified period, the following were destroyed and damaged: 3 tanks, 3 armored combat vehicles, 24 units of automotive and motor vehicles, 12 guns, 35 UAVs of various types. During the operation, as a result of search and strike actions, the settlements of Hruzke, Rubizhne, Novovodyane, Petrivka, Vesele, Zolotyi Kolodyaz in Donetsk region were cleared of the enemy, the General Staff added. The General Staff added that Ukrainian forces have cleared Russian troops from several Donetsk region settlements, including Gruzske, Rubizhne, Novovodyane, Petrivka, Vesele, and Zolotyi Kolodyaz. Ukrainian forces recently retook 2 villages in the Donetsk region, pushing back Russian troops in fierce counterattacks over the weekend, according to official statements and verified footage. The 79th and 82nd Air Assault Brigades liberated Zolotyi Kolodyaz and Petrivka, inflicting significant losses on Russian forces and capturing prisoners, Ukraine's Air Assault Command said. The counterattacks come as Kiev attempts to contain a 10-kilometer deep Russian salient near Dobropillia. Reports said Ukrainian assault groups, supported by drones, are mopping up Kremlin forces still hidden in nearby villages and forests. Ukrainian officials on Monday said Russians have lost nearly 1,000 troops killed or seriously wounded, 355 heavily wounded, and 37 captured since August 4. Independent monitoring group Deep State and local platforms also confirmed Ukrainian gains, with fighting continuing near Kucherovy Yar as Ukrainian units push through open fields against entrenched Russian defenses. The Center for Countering Disinformation of the National Security and Defense Council stated that the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service is trying to convince the West of its ability to seize Donetsk region this year, but this is not true.
The famous Russian Z-patriot Maxim Kalashnikov unexpectedly admitted the actual decay of the Russian army. In his broadcast, he spoke in detail about the chaos and internal reprisals in Putin's troops. Kalashnikov drew attention to the disappearance of the commander of the Russian armed forces, Yuri Burakov, call sign Sedoy. The battalion commander was summoned to his superiors at the end of July, after which he stopped communicating. Officially, he was declared a deserter, but there is no doubt among his fellow soldiers that the officer was removed by his own superiors. The story caused indignation, even among Z-patriots, but there were no real consequences. Kalashnikov said on air that such lawlessness is a common occurrence in the Russian armed forces. People from this 95th Regiment are simply afraid to speak openly. There are all the signs of decay, taking away salaries, fraud with humanitarian aid, operations with certain chemicals, fuel, reprisals against the unwanted. There are now very many such reports, not only from the 95th Regiment. I am afraid that Gray simply refused to follow the order to drive people to the assault in a frontal assault, and something bad was done to him. This is a systematic problem, he noted. According to Kalashnikov, dozens of appeals and video recordings from Russian armed forces soldiers from different units speak of the same thing: extortion, forced return to battle, even of the wounded, fraud with humanitarian supplies, and the elimination of those who try to resist. And this started from the first year of the war. Yuri Burakov tried not to be like that. He resisted it, and you see, he somehow disappeared, he said. The Z Patriot, in despair, called what was happening Augean stables. In fact, Kalashnikov's words confirm that Ukrainian and Western experts have been saying for a long time. The Russian army is experiencing a crisis of trust and discipline, turning into a bandit structure where war crimes, looting, and murder of their own soldiers are common practice. Recall in June, Russian soldiers near Kupiansk reportedly opened fire on their own officers. A platoon commander and 2 subordinates were gunned down by their own infantrymen before the perpetrators fled the front lines in stolen military vehicles. Sometimes Russian troops, unwilling to continue the bloodshed or face likely death, abandoned positions en masse, often under fire from both Ukrainian defenders and their own military police. The Russian community continues to develop its structure in the annexed Crimea. Offices have been opened in Simferopol and Sevastopol. District and city branches are being created, and the organization's volunteers have begun patrolling the peninsula's major cities. This was reported by a correspondent from Crimea. In addition to patrolling, the Vigilantes are involved in police and FSB raids. The Crimean Russian Community Squad has established working contacts with law enforcement agencies, and we are already being called in for law enforcement raids. So far, these are mainly trips to construction sites to identify and detain migrants who have violated the law. We are also invited to ensure order at citywide celebrations. Recently, our brothers from Sevastopol helped the police ensure security at the birthday of the Sevastopol Defense Museum celebration, one of the Russian community members said, on condition of anonymity. According to the source, the Russian community in Crimea operates without official registration. All activities of the Russian community and its squad in Crimea are self-sufficient. The squad members must purchase a gas canister from their coordinator for 3,000 rubles and an ID for 2,600 rubles. Unfortunately, we do not have a mass influx of Russians into the community, nor do we have rich sponsors. An informal structure connected to the ultra-right Russian community has begun to develop in the territory of annexed Crimea. Its participants are forming so-called squads, a security wing that plans to patrol Crimean cities. In July, more than 40 men in Crimea have already joined the squad, and now their number has grown significantly. At the conference of the Russian community, which took place on July the 12th in Simferopol with the participation of coordinator Andrei Kachuk, a decision was made to create combat fives, a commander, a negotiator, an operator, and 2 fighters. Crimean coordinators were instructed to speed up the process and begin patrolling from Simferopol for now in the evening. Since the organization is informal, they call it walks. The head of the Crimean squad was instructed to establish interaction with local law enforcement agencies and administrations, the interlocutor of Crim.Reli noted. Despite the fact that the organization Russian Community of Crimea, registered under Russian law, operates in Crimea, a parallel informal structure with the same name is actively developing on the peninsula. Its participants do not hide their sympathies for right-wing radical ideology and declare their readiness for self-organization without official status. The Russian community is becoming more active against the backdrop of high-profile incidents in Russia itself. For example, in Krasnozavodsk, near Moscow, a mass brawl recently broke out between natives of Chechnya and Ingushetia and, presumably, representatives of the Russian community. In recent months, members of this organization have been raiding cafes, hostels, and markets owned by people from the Caucasus, conducting unauthorized checks. Despite the violence and threats, Russian law enforcement officers in most cases limit themselves to formal responses.